So I heard My Hero's disappointing some individuals. It's not as good as it once was. This fun arc has been a disappointment, some might say. Do you think it only started in this particular arc? Ladies and gentlemen, strap in. This is gonna be a fun one. Yo, what's up, guys? It's your boy, the insane Game Freak here, the schizomaniac himself, back out of the gun with another one. So it's funny because people want to talk about My Hero and the thing with Bakugo. So if you don't know about the thing with Bakugo going on in the manga currently, don't watch this video. Although this video really won't be addressing that situation as much as the things that people didn't want to acknowledge going into that situation, as if My Hero had a perfect game going up until this point. It didn't at all. I think actually the first real problem kicks in during the Chisaki arc, with the way that's handled. But a lot of people tell you, "Oh, it was goated." So it's funny to me because My Hero, to me, very much had all the potential in the world to be one of the best series of its generation, and chose to fumble the bag like multiple times. It's funny because I put My Hero, Black Clover, and Demon Slayer in that group of animes where they came out and they're ending quicker than I think any of them really needed to. I think Demon Slayer was probably the most justified in ending relatively soon, and even then, I still feel it was rushed. And My Hero and Black Clover are both going to follow the same suit. The problem is we're way further into My Hero's final arc than we are Black Clover's, and My Hero's is just not, it's not hidden at all. But I want to talk about some of the things leading up into this arc that I find deplorable, that no one ever fucking talks about, because they think the problem came in with the final arc. It didn't. It was been issues. Now, some of this will be spoilers for the upcoming season, so if you don't want to hear the spoilers for that upcoming season, don't watch the video. But it's really gonna, everything else you know about. So if you're caught with the anime, you know about everything else. The first problem I think kicks in the Chisaki arc. I think the biggest issue is that Deku, to me, and I brought this up a multitude of times, but I'm going to reiterate it and kind of try to go in deeper with it. Deku, they're doing this whole thing in the final arc where they're like trying to talk about the effect that the heroes' current society and the generation that All Might brought in, and the heroes of that generations and the mistakes they made, and how that shit kept piling on each other, and how it led to the desolate situation that they're all currently in. And the problem is, this is coming from Shigaraki, you know, the guy in the first season who was making video game puns and references. Now, don't get it twisted. I like the concept of what Shigaraki represents, which is he and Deku are leveling up at the same time. That he's becoming a more of a real villain, which is why I liked him during the Chisaki arc, and why Deku at the same time is becoming more of a hero. And of course, you had to get to that point where they both diverge from their predecessors' paths. So All For One, he would go in a different direction, and All Might, Deku's supposed to go in a different direction. The problem is that this doesn't really happen for Shigaraki. If anything, Shigaraki just becomes more generic. I get that because he stops making the video game. To me, when he stopped making the video game puns, I understand it's supposed to be a sign of maturity, but he got less interesting. Actually, I would say his development kind of got worse once he and his fellow villains got their preferred arc. But let's stick with Chisaki first. Chisaki, I think, is fine all the way up until maybe the latter half of it. Pretty much all the Deku Chisaki stuff. And I just don't like calling him Overhaul. I prefer calling him Chisaki. That fight is terrible. I think Mirio is hoed for no good reason. I understand it thematically, but it doesn't make sense. I also find it annoying that Chisaki's like one of the major villains, probably next to Stain, that was generally trying to like change the world, and there was an ideology there that Deku could have addressed, and Deku chose to just focus on, well, if I can't save a little girl, I don't deserve to be a hero. And I'm just sitting here going like, bro, That's what you want to focus on, is the fucking little girl. Not saying Eri isn't important, and as you would come to find out later, she becomes way more plot important, even though it was kind of obvious considering work is to rewind time. The fuck? Such a stupid, broken fucking ability. But whatever. So you got this nonsense with Deku, this random thing with Night Eye being shown that you can change the future, and the past isn't, and the future isn't set in stone. Like, we make our own destinies and shit. And then the man who finally understands that you're not locked into a certain destiny still ends up dying, like in his original prediction. The only thing that changed is that he was the only one to die while Deku lived, which didn't mean much to me because that means I just learned something right before he died. And oh, by the way, this was the arc he's introduced in. I want to put this in context. There are very few characters you can introduce in an arc and kill them in the same arc, and that shit not come off as a waste of fucking time. There are exceptions. Don't get it twisted, but that is not one, and the one that comes up later is damn sure not a fucking exception. I also find it funny that because after Chisaki you get Gentleman. I think is a fine arc, but it's just a weird placement. Then we get into, I think that's My Villain Academia kicks in around that time, unless I'm missing something. I think that's the next arc, is the My Villain Academia, and that arc has a bunch of side issues with it that bother me. I think Spinner is the most interesting character throughout that entire arc, and I mean that entire arc. There are certain moments I fuck with, like I like the fact that Twice gets over his trauma and shit. Toga will never be an interesting character to me. She has never been interesting. She feels a niche and a fan service niche that people fuck with. But she in herself is like, the premise of her character boils down to, why is it that my quirk she's essentially Shinso. She has a quirk that inherently does not work in like traditional society, so she's shunned for it. The difference is that she's just the villain side of it. But like, the problem with Himiko is that her whole thing isn't about, like, it's very much, if you really look at it, she and Shinso are like two sides of the same coin. Shinso's what happens when he still sticks to the path of being a hero, even though he has a quirk that really doesn't fit in modern society and no one would view as an inherent heroic quirk. And Toga's the other side, where she just said fuck all that and just decided to do whatever the fuck she wanted to do, which involved indulging her quirk, which involved, people dying. So yeah, we can't really have that, can we? And so because of these things, she would have been a more interesting foil for Shinso, or at least a parallel to Shinso. The problem being is simple. They made her focus so heavy on Uraraka and the romance aspect with Deku, one of the most uninteresting things about their relationship. And keyword is like the main thing with, like, it's like 90% of what Uraraka's character amounts to. A lot of people will disagree. Well, no, she has a no. It's like 90%. Even if I wanted to be generous, it's still like 70% of her character. 70% of her character. If you go back and look at the entirety of My Hero Academia, almost every arc is correlating with her like struggle to get romance either in and out of her life. Like, the first chunk of the series is her realizing she's into him, or like dealing with her, or realizing she has feelings. The other half is her trying to deal with them and not have them interrupt her during her hero duties. And then the final section is just a little bit of, okay, I want to become a better hero, like the sequence with Night Eye, which I didn't even get into the obvious issue with the other obvious issue with Chisaki's arc, which is, why is it specifically the female heroes that don't get any use or play? And some of you are like, well, no, Froppy did this one thing, Ryugo did this one thing, and I'm like, yeah, but considering you had Sun Eater and Kirishima and Fat Gum and Aizawa and fucking Mirio and Deku, who all got full fights, but for some reason and some of you go, oh, why are you just saying the girls? Because it comes off really fucking jarring that it is literally only the girls. It's literally only the girls who are like locked. One, they're bunched together. They're Nejiri, who is at this even at this point in the series is still probably the most underplayed of the big three, a fucking pro hero, and then two of our class 1A girls are all locked into this one particular fight with this one guy who really don't fucking matter at all, with some light assistance. People were like, well, she's the one who like held down Shigaraki with her gunhead martial arts, and you're just like, oh, you mean after Deku beat the fuck out of him? Damn, Rocky, you out here killing it. You balling as fuck. Like, but that's which is, like I said, the main issue with Himiko and Uraraka is that they're both fucking romance fodder with a little bit of their own character. Although I would say Himiko, it seems more like a 50-50 split, whereas Uraraka, it feels like 70% of her character is focused around romance in some way, shape, or form, with the other 30% being kind of about her own development in Deku in the gunhead martial arts and shit I don't care about. And then and I say I don't care about it because the manga doesn't want me to care about it. The anime doesn't want me to give a fuck about it. That's why they never make a big deal out of it. That's why they never turn it into anything. It literally is kind of, it's always like an aside. Like the conversation will be talking about something like her dealing with her feelings, or Mina fucking with her saying, oh, you like Deku, don't you? I know you like Deku. You must like Deku. She's like, no, it's not like that. And then she'll be like, oh, I gotta get my shit together. And then it'll lead into, I think I'm gonna go train with Gunhead Master Arts again. Like, okay, fine, all right, have at it. And so, okay, and then My Villain Academia, like I said, the main two characters I think who stick out the best are Shigaraki. Are Spinner and probably Twice are the two best. Dobby is just there in that arc. That is the most pointless arc for me. And by the way, I just hate dealing with Dobby in general because his fucking setup was really predictable. The outcome was really predictable. Even in the final arc, the fight he's currently having is really predictable, other than them doing some random, hey, look, we're going to copy and subvert shonen expectations by doing shonen shit, which I won't get too much into that, but just know it's fucking predictable, and I don't give a fuck about you, Dobby. You're just not an interesting character. Your father's more interesting. Hell, at this point, your brother's more interesting. Shut the fuck out, Dobby. No one gives a shit. It's more interesting to see how characters deal with you than it is to just deal with you as a reader. Good God, that's crazy to me. But some people go, what about Shigaraki? What about, what, you didn't like his backstory? Like, what about it? That his dad was kind of strict on him because of the trauma he dealt with from his mother leaving him. By the way, Shigaraki knows nothing of like the issues his father faced. So like, it doesn't, I actually ironically enough think that it would have made more sense for him to learn the history and understanding of his father's position and then take it completely the wrong way. Like the sadness of the backstory is that his dad was coming around and was gonna start trying to be better around the moment Shigaraki's quirk activated and killed everybody. But like the way, what makes me mad is that I already knew what the point of the arc was. The arc has to exist because the characters were so limited. When you think about their every character's entire moveset, these characters are limited as fuck. Shigaraki's gimmick, Shigaraki was probably the most dangerous in terms of how much damage his ability could do, because it was based on the idea that if he touched you, he could disintegrate your whole fucking body. And even the last time we saw him do it, it took him a while. He still would have to hold on to you for a while to disintegrate your limbs. It wasn't like a touch and poof, your arm is gone. It was like, eh. I also find it annoying that you used a better villain as fodder for it, which is Destroyo, who I think, being essentially a superhero cult, being a supervillain cult that's based in the liberation of using your abilities, is an interesting idea. And then you wasted him on giving Shigaraki a team and kind of development. And I'm just like, fuck, that was a waste of a character. And it definitely was a waste of a character. This character literally gets thrown. I would have wished, if anything, I wish he had gotten an arc to himself first to see how much of a struggle and a pain in the ass he was. And then the next arc could have been the villain arc in which Shigaraki fucks him up, going, damn, this is a guy that even the hero struggled with. And Shigaraki came in here and beat him even at an overwhelming disadvantage because his team went through their power-ups. The power-ups are kind of gimmicky, but I'm fine with it because shonen shit does that all the time. If they can do it with the heroes, do it with the villains. Fuck it, that's not a big deal to me. But the problem is that the arc's premise was entirely predictable. Because, like I said, going back to the original quirks, Himiko's quirk is probably the most useless thing about her. She only really works for infiltration and like sneaky shit, or like random misdirection, which she doesn't really. She uses to a degree. I won't say that, but fucking, she's not. She's only a pain because of how acrobatic and physically fit she is. Dabi's annoying because the motherfucker uses fire. And you got Todoroki over here mastering like this crazy fire ice combination. Bakugo's an absolute problem, and Deku's getting more and more powerful, being able to use using more percentage of his one for all power. But he's getting used to using like 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45% without any damages to his body. When you got characters like that, and Shigaraki's ability still boils down to I gotta touch you before I can do any damage, it makes sense that arc literally only really serves one purpose: to make Shigaraki a threat. And it does that effectively, but he becomes a less interesting character. And it's funny to me because Shigaraki's whole thing up until I think actually even in this arc is just I just want to destroy shit. I wanted to just tear it all down. He essentially goes from being from making these game references and trying to be kind of new and having some level of nuance to him. And you could see he was developing throughout the arcs, like when him and Deku had that conversation. And he's like, oh, I should just start with fucking All Might. That's what I should have done. I should have started with that. I should have started with the core. Like he's figuring out the villain he wants to be versus having a flashback that he doesn't fucking care about nor remember, have any remorse towards, and it just turns into I just want to destroy everything. And I'm like, so he's actually just generic as fuck now. And then we have the mini arc with Endeavor, which I fuck with. There are issues with Endeavor's character, mainly just because they don't give you a proper transitionary period between him being a crazy sociopathic dickhead and like a mournful father who wants to repent for all his terrible actions. There's not enough time to see that transition. And then you get into the war, which is what the next season's gonna cover. And people are probably gonna fuck with the beginning of the war. The beginning of the war is kind of it's a pretty hard, pretty nice, and we fuck with it heavy, mainly because of Hawks and Mirako. Mirako and Hawks are the two reasons why you fuck. And you know what? Crust, Mirako, and Hawks are the three characters who solo the first half of that war, and it's great. And then that second half hits, and everybody else gets involved. And man, I went from being like, oh, this is pretty good, to like, fuck you, God. What the fuck am I watching? What am I watching? I don't know. Somebody tell me. The war is so... the latter half is so fucking stupid. And I'm not going to go through the specifics only because I don't want to go too much into some of you who don't give a fuck about spoilers, but do, and still chose to watch anyway. But just know, the one thing that's bothered me for the longest fucking time, because of when he says it, when it's placed, and just everything surrounding it, it drove me insane. And that's because the Dabi shit I've complained about ad nauseum. The way they handled his reveal, and Best Genius's return, and Mirio randomly getting his powers back. There's a lot of contrivances to just do these key moments. To me, that was the time where it was really obvious. Horikoshi was just trying to create moments. He didn't give a fuck about like a narrative structure at all. He's just having moments. Oh, here comes Todoroki. Here comes Bakugo. But like, granted, the Bakugo writing was great. Don't get it twisted. Don't ever get that twisted. The Bakugo writing was great. But all this other shit, I don't care. I even like the shit with like certain heroes, certain villains sacrificing themselves for Shigaraki. The problem is at this point I got crazy Madman Shigaraki on some ridiculous shit. And they're having this crazy battle, and at the very end of it, when Shigaraki is able to run away, Deku looked at him and goes, "It looked like you were crying for help." And I'm just like, no, no, you haven't earned that. You haven't earned that. Deku and Shigaraki have barely interacted for him to feel the way he's feeling. He hasn't even had enough internal dialogue about society and the heroes and what All Might's legacy is and the good and the bad that came with it. He doesn't have any of that shit, and we never get to see any of that shit until until in the next arc. The next arc kind of does it. And I'm like, considering what he says to Shigaraki about, "I'm gonna save you, Shigaraki," and you're just like, bro, you have not earned that. And some of y'all gonna get mad that I'm gonna make the comparison, but this shit always reminds me of Naruto in the Pain arc. Naruto in the Pain arc completely earned the way he was, because that was the kind of character he was always being built to be. All the way back in the Zabuza arc, Naruto was slowly understanding and coming up with his own ninja way, while also like learning the lives and seeing how he felt about the strife and struggles of traditional ninja like Zabuza and Haku and shit. So when he got all the way down to Pain, Pain challenged that man's worldview, and he had to look inside himself and figure out what the fuck he was gonna say and do. He sat down, he was willing to listen to this motherfucker talk about his life and get an understanding, and then he came to his conclusion and was able to properly convince Pain. I get that the end of the Pain arc is a very controversial ending, but at least you can say it was built up to it and it was earned. To say some dumb shit at the end of that fucking war talking about you look like you need saving, who the fuck are you talking to, Deku? Do you think you give a fuck? I don't. If you give a fuck, you have not given any indication you give any type of fuck at all. At all. And you want to throw this bullshit in here about, "Oh, I want to save Shigaraki." Fuck you, nigga. You haven't earned none of that, dog. You haven't even had enough internal monologues to yourself about the situation in society. And some of y'all talk about, "Oh, I don't think my hero needs to do that." Yes, the fuck he does. When you have a main character, when you have a villain who's now talking about the struggles and issues of society, which also, all of a sudden, when the fuck do you care about that, Shigaraki? That was the other thing that drove me nuts. This man goes into a tube to heal and shit. He's in the tube for like half the fucking arc. He comes out, and now he wants to start waxing poetically about the issues with the hero-dominated society and what All Might's generation really brought and all this other shit. You never gave a fuck about any of those things. You just wanted to do whatever the fuck you wanted to do. And then at the My Villain Academia arc, that's really what it came down to. I just want to do whatever the fuck I want to do. So now, why is it you get healed and all of a sudden it's all about, well, I think the issues plaguing our society. I'm like, bitch, don't act like y'all earned this. This is not how this writing works. Hirokoshi, you can't all of a sudden, and he thinks he's earned it mainly for this particular reason. Because throughout the arcs, the early arcs, he was throwing in all these hints about the struggles of the society. So I understand why he thinks he's earned it. But here's the problem. A, you only did this around the pro heroes. B, even the UA students that got involved never properly reflected or talked about it or had any type of dialogue about it. So they just carried on with their normal school activities because you wanted to have your cake and eat it too. You wanted to sit there and be like, hey, I want to have a fun slice of life high school show while also having kind of like a pseudo-serious superhero deconstruction type of show. And I'm like, those aren't bad ideas, but then you combine them, but you still wanted to have the extremes of both, which is, to me, what the war is culminated in. You still want to have the super... Like, do y'all remember the stupid ass in the manga when the Class 1A comes to get Deku after his whole fake ass vigilante arc that only lasts like less than 10 chapters? I think it was like 10 chapters or less. And then what was the next scene? They're in the bath just smiling and bathing and shit. What a weird emotional whiplash. I think that was the point. But to me, it's a perfect example of how you still trying to be this happy-go-lucky high school show and niggas out here dying. This was also around the time we got that whole Stars and Stripes situation, which fuck you, Hirokoshi. You did that literally to throw that bitch in the garbage and use her quirk on another character that may or may not come to play. It better come to play, because if it doesn't, Now it's like, what the fuck was the point of that skirmish other than to temporarily fuck up Shigaraki and then be like, I'm introducing like a wrench in the plans, but like I'm telling you in advance there's gonna be a wrench in the plans, and I'm just like, oh, it's not clever when you do it this way because we know it's coming. What would be clever is how you use it. But you introduced it in the arc before the final arc or the final-ish arc, and then went, hey, this is gonna be a thing you're gonna see kind of sort of soon. Or in the near future. And I'm just like, what in the world? But that's my issue. Actually, I think that's the best way to describe My Hero. My Hero is a series that wants to have its cake and eat it too. You still want to be a lighthearted slice of life school anime while also being like a pseudo serious superhero commentary sort of anime. And you don't do neither of them particularly well because unfortunately your slice of life shit is the shit that actually made you the most popular in the West. So anytime you do like super serious shit, people don't care. But like the way it's spaced out is when you get people to care about one, the other falls to the wayside. For example, the Japanese fans don't like My Villain Academia. Doesn't surprise me because the way you've been selling the show up until that point was this like super relatively happy-go-lucky slice of life school anime with a couple of serious moments sprinkled out here and there. Then you get to the West and it's almost the same issue. The West are just like, I don't give a fuck about this joint training arc. It's boring as fuck. It's not even a bad arc. And that was what killed me. When I went back and rewatched it in the anime, it's not a bad arc at all. It's just really poorly placed. And it's placed like way too late into the series. This shit should have been introduced like, it should have been like the third or second main arc if you're gonna do that. And you threw it like right behind the Endeavor, My Villain Academia stuff in the war. Like what? And you mainly did it because some of these characters were new or hadn't been properly introduced or fleshed out, and you were gonna use them, even though you didn't use them much at all. Like dead ass. And then, but he thinks he's so fucking clever because he killed Midnight in that war, yo. Most niggas would tell you they feel more worse about Crust dying than they do Midnight. Because Midnight isn't an interesting character. Midnight doesn't get a lot of story or backstory in the series, in the main series at all. And you want me to feel bad that she's dead. And then what he's doing is he's trying to set up these moments for the war. So when like the final arc came, you got this one random villain's like, oh, and I killed that one weird teacher who was trying to save her students. And he said it, he just says it randomly, and B, he says it within an earshot of Mina and Kirishima. Oh, I wonder why. I wonder if that's supposed to be a matchup of some sort. Yeah, it is. Of course it fucking is. Oh no, Hawks is in trouble. I wonder if his pupil's gonna come in. Oh yeah, hey Tokiyami, what's going on? Oh no, Dabi's here. I wonder if Shoto is gonna have to handle his brother like we know he's going to, because of course everything with Dabi is uninteresting and fucking really obvious and boring as sin. It's literally, I am the tortured older brother and I have all these problems, and I'm the younger brother who also had problems, but I figure out how to fix my shit. And Brig Bro, I'm trying to save you. Let me save you. Fuck you. I'm too far gone. I'm gonna kill myself and kill you all. You stupid fucks. Oh, by the way, I can randomly get shonen power-ups and gain abilities that I just saw once, and I don't even have the right inherent ability to do it, but I have a power that's good enough to emulate it. And you're just like, what in the fuck are we doing here? Just write the goddamn story competently. Holy shit. And then you got Uraraka versus Toga. Was anybody fucking surprised the two romance type characters fought each other? You mean the same characters who've been interacting with each other the whole fucking show? And oh, by the way, Himiko gives a love confession that just seems kind of pointless and random because who gives a shit? Who gives a shit? It's funny, there were so many arcs and subplots you could have done. You could have had Toga pretend to be like this fake student and interact and engage with like Class 1A and other characters as this fake student and get to see Deku from a side that wasn't bloody. So she would be developing as a character where she's like, maybe the blood and all that other dumb shit isn't really the main thing that's important. It's not the thing that like hooks and draws me into Deku. Maybe I genuinely like Deku. And then it would hurt so much because Deku and them would find out eventually that was Toga. But Toga would be like, but that experience is what allowed me to love you more genuinely. And then maybe your rocker could say some shit like, now we can connect on a more personal level. And you could see her struggles through the eyes, through the face of someone else. Someone where she's weird, but she's not like, fuck you weird, right? Maybe because people know that she has to ingest blood, but there are multiple characters who have just blood quirks. She's not the only blood quirk user. It's just that her blood quirk is a transformation type quirk, right? It trips me out when I'm thinking of arcs and premises. The thing that also drove me nuts is there's not enough Class A characters getting their own little mini arcs or like subplots. For example, we get a little bit during the Chisaki arc where we get to see Sun Eater, Fat Gum, and Red Riot go on patrol, and then you see Red Riot develop his move and shit. Why is that not more of a thing? Why? But see, that's the reason why people were complaining before, where the show started feeling like it was only about Bakugo, Deku, and Todoroki. If it didn't have Bakugo, Deku, or Todoroki, Bakugo, Deku, or Todoroki in it, then the show ain't shit. It's one of those three has got to be the focus. And right now, it's the Bakugo show with his current predicament in the manga. And I'm just sitting here in the back going, no one fucking believes you because Hirokoshi, you don't have the balls to do it. You'll for some reason have a weird thing about dismembering Morocco for no guy. Oh, the character who did the most is the one. It trips me out that this show has a bad tendency of punishing characters who put in the work. Fucking crazy. The characters who most exemplify the kind of heroes you want to be get punished so much. This is true of Bakugo. This is true of Miroku. This is true of Hawks. This is true of Mirio, who got lost his powers for a good chunk of time because he prioritized the safety of a child that he didn't necessarily need to save, but he chose to save because that's what a hero would do. You don't just stand there and let a girl get shot, regardless of if it would actually kill her or not. What kind of person sits there and lets a little girl get shot? It trips me out. And then you want to hear this fucking annoying ass social commentary from Shigaraki, the worst character to be giving you this social commentary. And you could have fixed that. I think Chisaki was a good representation of one of the kind of arcs you could have done with Shigaraki in the background or somewhat involved and have him still develop in the background as a character. But no, now he wants to destroy everything. But the hero society needs to be fixed because it's not right. We're going to make everything equal. And now I'm a misunderstood tragic villain because of the trauma that I went through with my dad, who told me I can't be a hero because of the trauma he went through with his mother, his grandmother, one of the best heroes of all time, being like, I got to separate. She separated herself from the family and it burned her son, which then burned her grandson because he didn't want her grandson to become a hero. Like, that shit was interesting. But that's why I said it would have been more interesting to see Shigaraki understand and try to understand his dad's point of view and then take his dad's point of view and twist it into his, like, fucked up ideology. The point is that Shigaraki's meant to be wrong, but also be right. They've done that here, but it doesn't feel earned in the way it could have felt. And now I'm just angry and pissed off at a shitty written situation. And I realize that My Hero is going to do that thing where it ends in a way that just bums me the fuck out because you could have done so much better, but you chose to be like, let me just show you a cool moment. But what about Bakugo's death, right? That's the thing that everybody's tripping out about currently. It's the Bakugo death. And I'm sitting over here looking at Bakugo's death going, the only thing that makes me angry is that no one takes it seriously because of course they don't. Now granted, it's not that My Hero doesn't have this thing about killing characters or anything. We lost Night Eye and Midnight. The problem is no one gives a fuck about Night Eye and Midnight. Like at all. Like Crust, I think, like I said, Crust, my nigga Crust has way more emotion and compassion from me than fucking Midnight or Night Eye. Who Midnight is an off-screen-ish death. And Night Eye is that whole don't give up into the future, destiny. Which, by the way, if you watch enough shown, then the Destiny conversation is like one of the most boring conversations, and he did it literally the exact way, except it was like a side note. Like the Night Eye stuff is such a side note in the series, it's ridiculous. And once again, you did that shit a Comic Got Killed did, where you introduce a character and kill him in the same arc. I don't give a fuck. The Stars and Stripes thing was the same goddamn thing. This bitch didn't even make it past 10 chapters. I think this bitch is only in like 5 to 7 chapters. Fuck you, Hirokoshi. Fucking But the final arc is where it got bad. No, bitch, it's been bad probably since Shisaki. Shisaki's arc. What about Vigilante Deku? Oh, you mean the Deku who just looked villainous but still did the same good things he's always known for doing? He wasn't even overly beating up villains or anything. The nigga was literally only considered like in his anti-hero shit because of how he looked. But he was still doing the same nice shit he always does. He just didn't look nice. Ugh. And then you try to give me an emotional interaction with Class 1A. Some of these characters have barely interacted with Deku because you didn't know how to write smaller arcs. Don't worry, Black Clover, you have similar issues, but goddamn, it's a lot worse than My Hero because My Hero said, here's a bunch of characters who are going to maintain relevance, and then they didn't maintain relevance. If anything, they fell off, and then he had to reintroduce a bunch of them to make them relevant, only to use them for a small subsection, and now they're irrelevant again. Fuck you, Hirokoshi. It is 11:22. I'm angry and annoyed at Hirokoshi. I'm going to bed. I hope this was educational. If anything, I hope you were entertained. But I'm going to bed. So good night, everybody. Life's a game, play to win, and I will catch you guys. What the hell was that?